on the 25th a meeting.
Okay.
April.
Wow. Okay. How many people do you think you're going to be?
I know the 20th, we normally have about 16 to 20 women.
Okay.
And on the 25th, there'll probably be about 10.
Okay. All right. Hold on one second. Megan, how are we doing? Are we all set to up on live?
Yes.
Okay. And oh, and you've given me, I'm gonna disable the waiting room and let me just admit everybody in here. Admit all. There we go. Thanks, Claudia, for that info. I'm gonna circle back. Okay. Thanks, Megan.
You're welcome.
Hello, everybody. Welcome,
Hello.
welcome.
Hello.
Howdy.
Hi.
See, today is Thursday. Happy Thursday.
Okay.
There's Hiroko. I haven't seen Hiroko in a while. Camera on, camera on. There she is. Hi, Hiroko. So good to see you. We have a couple more folks who may be joining us. I'm just going to give it another moment or two. So I talked to Claudia about the meeting she's going to be hosting. Marjorie, how about you? Do you have any plans on hosting any meetings, any webinars, or you're just really interested in what this is all about?
Yeah, I'm trying to find out what it's all about. I'm not computers. I'm not trying to learn.
Okay, well, that's great. No, and that's what these classes are about too. Not everybody's hopping on and hosting a webinar with, 10,000 people. So that's, Hiroko, how about you? Are you going to be hosting any Zoom meetings or even webinars, do you think? Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself. Sorry, Hiroko, you're muted. She knows how to do this. Can you find your, there you go.
All right, I have been asked to do a couple of things, stuff, but out of fear, I have been avoiding. That came to the point, I have to do it.
Okay.
I have a basic concept, but then a little bit, uneasy about doing it.
Okay. Okay,
If something
great.
goes
So
wrong in the midst of meeting, I just don't know what to do.
you don't know what to do. All right. Okay, we can talk about some of that too, maybe getting some help during a meeting. So, okay, so it sounds like you may have some meetings that you've been asked to host.
Yes.
Okay, how many people do you think will be attending?
For instance, a group of a student at Middlebury College
Okay.
who are studying Japanese language, including my grandson. They want me to give a Zoom class using the textbooks and help the homework as well.
Okay, got it.
But I just cannot be responsible in case something goes wrong in the midst of my presentation.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, that gives me an idea of what you're possibly looking to do. So I get it. Okay, we'll go over some tips and tricks. So just ask questions. Barbara, how about you? Are you going to be hosting any meetings or webinars in the future?
Yeah, I hope to. I'm a docent at an art museum, so I want to do some meetings with people on tours of the collection, and then I also want to kind of find out how to give lectures on different topics to people, but charge for it.
Okay, got it.
That's basically why I'm taking this particular class.
Okay. We can talk about that. And Wayne, how about you? Do you think you're going to be hosting any meetings or webinars, anything like that in the future?
I think possibly. I attend a small church, and right now, of course, we're doing everything by Zoom. And people don't like to come to meetings, even if we have them after services on a Sunday. So I'm thinking maybe Zoom would help. And then I thought we're trying to, think of all the good ways to make contacts in the community. maybe there's some way we can use Zoom to create activities to bring people in from the neighborhood and community.
Oh, interesting.
So I
Okay.
thought, well, find out.
Got it. Okay,
I
great.
mean, I
Thank you.
attended a Zoom wedding the other week.
It's used for everything now, right? Great.
It sure is.
Thank you. Kathy, how about you? Do you, sorry, I missed Nancy, but Kathy, how about you? Do you think you're going to be using this at all for,
I
yeah.
yeah, Vicky, I may. I've taken some other classes with you, and
Oh, yeah.
I currently do some. I call them Zoom workshops, similar to get set up
Okay.
sessions. Anyways, for our community, through a nonprofit and also through our local library. So we've done a lot of the Zoom piece, you know, teaching people about Zoom on Zoom.
Okay.
But I'd like, this sounded interesting, to do maybe some fun activities. We've talked about it and I've tried some with people, but I'm always willing to get some more ideas so that we could possibly offer this.
Okay. Got it. Thanks. Wonderful. And
I
Nancy,
belong to a group that
Yeah.
in the past, I used to do educational trivia, but that was all, you know, before this computer
okay.
thing started. So we haven't been able to do it since then, but I didn't offer to do it on Zoom. That's why I'm trying to learn as much as possible. So if I learn that, I think I'll be able to do it for them.
Okay. Using for games. Okay. And we do have other classes, just so that you know, that focus on playing games. You know, how do you play games on Zoom? So there are specific ones for that too. So you may want to check those out, Marjorie.
Okay.
Wendy, how about you? Do you think you're going to be hosting any meetings or maybe even webinars?
Well, hi. I actually am curious about these fundraisers that are virtual. I've never been on one. I just don't know how that would work.
Okay.
I've run fundraisers in the past, and I'd like to learn about doing that virtually.
Okay. All right. Got it. And Nancy, how about you? Are you going to be hosting any meetings or webinars, anything like that in the future? Oops, Nancy, your volume might be low. I know you're trying to talk. You took yourself off mute. Okay. I can't hear. All right, I'm going to hop over to Joanne since Nancy, I can't hear your volume. Joanne, how about you? Are you going to be hosting any meetings or doing any webinars, anything like that?
Yes, I am. I'm looking at doing some regarding voting and how important it is.
Some voting. Okay. Voting workshops. Okay. This
And
gives
also,
me, yeah, sure.
Military, anything military related, raising funds for the military.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, wonderful. Thanks for giving me that information. I'm just going to share my screen with you. I have we have some slides, and then today is just all interactive. And welcome everyone. My name is Vicki. I'm your Get Set Up Guide. Just a teeny bit about me. I'm calling in here from San Jose, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley. I worked in high tech for 30 years, so I've done a lot of technical support, technical training, instructional design. I've worked with students from all kinds of backgrounds, very technical, not so technical. And I love being a guide because it allows me to really help folks who are just starting out in this world of technology feel more comfortable about dipping their toes in and just learning and using as well. Just a few housekeeping details. You know, we're a learning community. We'd love it if you can turn your cameras on so we can see you, you can see each other. I don't require it. It's up to you if you want to turn your camera on or not. We are recording today's class. And if you would like a copy of today's recording, you can always email us at help@getsetup.io. And we may have folks joining us by live stream today. Welcome. You can see everything and hear everything that we're doing today in class, but I always encourage folks to register for a class, and that way you can fully participate with us in class. And finally, Get Set Up is a learning organization. We're not paid to promote any products or services. We are all about the learning. Things that we're going to talk about today. So, the class focuses on Zoom or video webinars or conferences, but honestly, a lot of the concepts that we cover, you're going to be able to apply to video meetings. And if you're not sure what the difference between a meeting and a webinar is, we're going to tackle that first. We're going to talk about how, ideas about promoting your event, tips and tricks for hosting, and how to keep your audience engaged once you've gotten them into a meeting. And so that's really what the focus is today. If you have any questions, please just unmute yourself. I have the chat open. If you would like to throw something into the chat, I'm monitoring that as well. And to start off with, for people who are really new to this, just know that a virtual event is basically any event that's held online. Usually virtual events are on a web-based platform. They may or may not include features like polling, question and answer, surveys, there's the chat. So, you've seen this if you've been taking Zoom classes, if you've been on Get Set Up, we've used a number of these features. And virtual events can include, online training and workshops, virtual conferences, what we're calling webinars, as well as fundraising events. I know that some of you expressed interest in doing some fundraising events, whether that's an educational event, it might be a performance-based event, games, game night, anything like that. So we're just wanting to get started with what is a virtual event. Also, when you're creating your event and deciding, what type of an event you're going to have, just know that events can be free, such as our Get Set Up classes, or they can be paid. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, how you can set up your event so that your participants are paying for the event. You can also have a fundraiser where maybe you're asking folks to donate, make a donation. They're not required to pay, but you're just going to ask them for a donation. And so really the basic process for any type of event that you're going to be hosting is the same. We're going to talk about the steps, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the Zoom features that you may be able to use, whether it's for a webinar or for a meeting. And for those of you who aren't sure what the difference between a virtual meeting and a webinar, I've tried to lay it out in a table format to make it easier. So really, we're talking about capacity and audience interaction. And so a virtual meeting, and that's what we're doing today, is a virtual meeting. Many of you may have even hosted virtual meetings, even if they're workshops. We're talking about less than 100 participants usually. And a virtual meeting has a lot of participant interaction. Participants are unmuting themselves, muting themselves, they're turning their camera on and off. They can potentially share their screens. So there's a lot of interaction. And that's very different with a video conference or a webinar. When we're talking about a webinar, think about large audiences up to possibly 50,000 people or more. There's really little or no audience participation. Audiences are really just attendees. They're just hearing. They may be able to post a question in the Q&A board, and it's really up to the host to control when a participant can, ask questions, they can unmute them and mute them. So there's a bit of a difference in terms of what you can do, what a webinar looks like versus a virtual meeting. And really, it's more about size and interaction. And so let me know if you have any questions about that, because sometimes people are saying, well, I think maybe I'll do a webinar. And then when they actually, take a look at what a webinar is, they're like, oh, I don't think that's going to be really what I need. And so I'm just curious, anybody at this point think that they will actually be moving forward with a webinar? I'm just curious. Anyone? Or Barbara, you think okay, you may be interested in a webinar. All right, the rest of us I think maybe are going to be leaning towards the meeting, the virtual meeting, which is absolutely fine. Myra, did you have a question? Your hand's up.
No, I will eventually be doing a webinar.
A webinar, okay, great.
Up and coming off.
All right, we got 2 takers for webinars. Great. All right, so that's the difference between a virtual meeting and a webinar. Now, again, the focus of this class is on webinars, but really the concepts that we're going to cover for the most part, you can also apply towards virtual meetings. We do have a number of other Zoom classes that focus more on the how-to when it comes to hosting meetings, scheduling meetings, using the whiteboard, breakouts, and so on. Today's class is more about concepts versus how-tos. But if you have specific questions, just go ahead and ask away. So let's just talk a little bit about Zoom webinar features. Now, the first thing you'll see is there's a little asterisk here. If you're going to be using Zoom to host your webinar, you do need to purchase an additional webinar plan. So you'll need to have a paid Zoom account versus a free account. And in addition to the paid account, you'll also need to purchase a webinar plan. And I just wanted to show folks what this looks like. I'm just going to, I'm opening up on my browser the Zoom website, and I'm going to click on plans and pricing. Now, we've talked about before in other classes the difference between the free plans and the paid plans. So you'll need to have one of these paid plans if you're going to be hosting a webinar. In addition, if I come up here and click on the Zoom webinar, Zoom video webinar, here are the different webinar plans that you can purchase. And really the difference is based on the number of attendees. So if you're going to be hosting a Zoom webinar, so for Zoom meetings, we all know that there are hosts and participants. We're pretty comfortable with that idea. And as a participant, you can share your screen, you can mute, unmute yourself, raise your hand, you have reactions. There's a lot that you can do. When we're talking about webinars, we have a new type of, some new type of users. We have hosts. We have something called panelists, which really are similar to participants. And then we have something called attendees. So attendees literally are view-only attendees. They're view-only participants. And this is how you can increase your attendance. So when you set up a webinar, you can invite panelists, and these are folks who maybe they're going to be speaking at your webinar. They can share their screens. They have all the features that participants in today's meeting have. But you can also invite attendees, which really can't do much. They are view only. They can participate in a Q&A session, which we'll talk about. They can virtually raise their hand. And I don't even think they can see other attendees, to be honest with you. Participants can't, attendees can't. And so really it's the price you're going to pay for the webinar package is based on the number of attendees that you plan on inviting to your webinar. And so I just wanted to make sure people understood that. And let me know if you have any questions about what you're seeing. Any questions about that, the webinar pricing? I just wanted to bring that up because sometimes people don't realize. They're like, oh, I'm going to do a webinar. I'm like, oh, that's great. Do you realize that you have to pay additional money? So a few other things that you can do with a webinar. Now, some of these broadcasting to an unlimited audience via Facebook, this is called streaming live. You can do that with a paid account as well. You don't have to have the webinar plan. You also, as long as you have a paid plan, you can brand automated email and registration pages. You can do that for meetings as well. But what you can do through with a webinar package is you have this option now to set up paid registration through PayPal. It's done seamlessly and it's a nice feature to have. You don't need to go to another website to set this up. Zoom will do all of this for you. So if you're going to have registrants paying when they register, this can be done through PayPal. Polling questions, which some of you may or may not have used. This is also available with a paid Zoom account, but you can use it for webinars. Things that you're only going to be able to access if you're going to be using a webinar package are something called a Q&A dialog box, and I'll show you a screenshot of that a little bit later. And this is much more formalized than using the chat, because when you think about it, if you're having 300 people attending a webinar, trying to monitor the chat when 300 people are entering in comments and questions is a bit overwhelming. So this is where this Q&A dialog box comes in handy. For webinars, you also have something called a practice session, which is really nice. So right before you go live with your webinar, you can start a practice session, invite other speakers or panelists who are going to be presenting, and make sure that their audio and video checks out. If they have any questions about, what their role is, the practice session is good for that. Webinars also have some additional performance reporting, and you can also send what's called a post-event survey link. And so these are all the things that you can use with the webinar package. Again, some of these are going to be available for you if you're just hosting a meeting. And let me know if you have any questions about this. Yeah, Barbara.
So I kind of missed what you said. The paid registration and the polling, they're
Right.
both available with a paid Zoom account.
Actually, this paid registration, what you can actually do it for a meeting, but you'll need to use a third party. However, if you're going to use the webinar package, Zoom will set this paid registration up for you using PayPal. So you don't have to figure out how to do this at all. You just say, yes, this is a paid event, and then Zoom will set this up for you.
That's on the webinar, right?
That's the webinar, yes.
Okay, but on the paid regular Zoom account, what do you mean a third party, like PayPal?
Well, there are other websites that you can go to, and you can say, I want to charge for my Zoom meeting. And you would put in the Zoom URL, the meeting URL there. And so you would have to actually use another company's website to set up the payments. I haven't worked with PayPal doing that. I just know that it's seamless when you use the webinar. But I can show you information if you're going to be hosting a meeting and you want to charge people to attend your Zoom meeting. Yeah. I can give you some examples. Yep, I'll be happy to show you that.
Okay.
Yeah, any other questions? Okay. Let's keep going. Let's talk a little bit about what goes into planning. So for some folks who are just going to start planning their Zoom meetings, and again, this can be for webinars or meetings, maybe you've been hosting some meetings and haven't thought about any of these. And we've talked about some of them. So obviously you need to know what your theme or topic of your event is going to be. That goes without saying, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes people are just all over the place. Also, think about the duration of your conference or meeting. Is it going to be for just a few hours? Is it going to span a couple of days, a few hours per day? So just things to start thinking about. Charging attendees, we've talked about, is it going to be free? Are you going to charge them? If you're going to charge them, again, you have this webinar package, which will allow you to, which Zoom will help you set up the PayPal integration, but I'll also show you an example of another company's website that you can use if you would like to charge attendees for a Zoom meeting. How many people do you anticipate registering for the events? Because if it's going to be more than 100, you may need to think about going with the webinar route. And then this is something that people don't think about as well. Your attendee persona. So who are the age? What's the age of the people who are going to be attending? Where are they going to be calling in from? Across the US? Different countries? Could there possibly be connectivity issues? If so, maybe you want them to be able to connect to the audio version via their phones. What is the technical ability of people? Are people going to be technically challenged, do you think? Maybe you need to have another person on the meeting with you who can help people with technical issues. If they're having connectivity issues or they can't get their camera or audio to work. So when you're setting up your meeting, whether it's a webinar or a meeting, start to think about who's going to be attending, because you may or may not need to think about pulling another person in there who is just going to staff maybe the chat, or is going to be there in the beginning to help people who are having, problems connecting or logging in, that kind of a thing. So people don't think about this when they're planning. And I know, Hiroko, I don't know if you can have anybody that you can invite with your meeting who's maybe from the college, who is more technical and can be on the call with you to help you with any technical issues.
I would say yes.
Okay, because that may give you that peace of mind if somebody else can be there who has a more technical background, who can help with the technical issues. Whether it's presenters not being able to share their screen or participants not being able to log in, that kind of a thing. So just things to think about. What else do I wanted to share? And some of these are going to, what type of event are you going to have? And this is more if you're going the webinar. Is it going to be a panel discussion? Are you going to be having multiple speakers talking? Are you going to be the only one talking? Another interesting event is what we call a performance-based event. So let's just say you have a musical event that you're hosting. It may be that you just need to have the chat available. Instead of having a webinar, maybe you just have host a meeting and different people will be sharing their screens, with their musical performance. Maybe you just need to have people, attendees being able to get to the chat window to say, oh, I really love that piece. So, it really depends again on the type of event that you're going to have. I know some folks had talked about maybe a game night, hosting a game night, and that may be if you're going to have different games, you may want to consider hosting an event that uses breakout rooms. because each breakout room could be a different game. That's one way to handle it. So, you know, again, think about what is it you're going to be doing, and then what are some of the Zoom features that you might want to be using. Another consideration is if you want to really be able to reach additional users, you might want to consider live streaming your event on Facebook or YouTube. You do need to have a paid Zoom account to do this. You don't, whether you're using a webinar, going to be hosting a webinar or a meeting, we actually do live stream. We're doing live stream right now. We have our own live stream service that we use, but in the past we've used Facebook, and you can also use YouTube. So if that's something that's of interest to you, you might want to consider that. And also, are you going to be recording the event? If you are going to be recording your event, first of all, you need to let people know that you're recording. And also, you need to let, if you want to provide a copy of the recording to your attendees, you have to figure out, well, how best do I want to get that to them? Do I want to email them a link? Do I want to make that link available on my website? There are different ways of doing this. So just curious, let me throw it out to the class. Anyone going to be recording any of their events? Making anything available? No? Okay. Myra, you think you're going to be recording? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So just, yeah. And Kathy, you too. Kathy, you're thinking about recording. Okay. Yeah. And so things to, you know, just think about. And if you have a paid account, a paid Zoom account, you can, you're going to be storing your recording, what we call in the cloud. And so it's just available there for you. And you can set up a link and send it in a follow-up email after your event. If you're, another consideration, if you're going to be, you know, hosting maybe a webinar or you're charging people for the event, if you want to give them a recording, maybe you can say, well, if you know, pay a certain fee, you can have the recording. So if you didn't get a chance to attend the event, we'll be happy to provide one either free of charge or for a fee. That's a, you know, you need to figure that one out as well. All right, so that's part of the planning, some considerations to think about. We talked about broadening your reach with live streaming, and this is what it looks like on Zoom. What you'll do is, as a host, you'll click on this More button, and you'll need to set this up under the settings when you're scheduling your meeting, whether it's a Zoom meeting or a Zoom webinar. And you'll just say, yes, I'm going to be doing live streaming. You'll select the service. And then once you've done that, you will launch your Zoom event, and then you'll launch the live streaming. And so that's what's happening right now. We have live streaming going on. And so it's very easy to set up. And there are a lot of YouTube videos on how to set this up. I don't believe we have a Zoom class yet for this, but if you're interested, let us know with the feedback button if this is something you would like more information about. So one of the things before we go to promoting your event, let me just go back up to my browser window. Let me go to the Zoom. I'm back on the Zoom, the main Zoom screen. And I'm just going to go to my account for a moment. One of the things that you'll see here is when you start scheduling your Zoom webinar. So hopefully people have attended our class on how to schedule a meeting. If you feel comfortable with that, what you'll be doing for a webinar. And we don't have a webinar package at Get Set Up with our license, so I can't show you how to do this, but it works the same way as scheduling a meeting. So you'll click on, instead of schedule a meeting, it will say schedule a webinar. And then it will take you through much of the same questions that you've seen when you schedule a meeting, a Zoom meeting. And of course, there will be some additional options in terms of registration or paid registration. There is some branding that you have options to. So there are just going to be additional options for you to select. But again, I can't show it to you because our license doesn't have the webinar package. But what I will do in the after class notes, I'll include some good YouTube videos that you can watch, which will take you through scheduling a webinar and also what it looks like for participants to attend one of these Zoom webinars. So I just wanted to show this to you in case people are like, well, how do I even start to create a webinar? You're going to do it here. I'm on the web portal. You go to the zoom.us site, log into your account, and then once you have a webinar package, you'll simply click on webinars, and here it'll be schedule a webinar. So let me know if you have any questions on that. Again, wish I could show you, but that's as far as I can take you on this one. For folks who are going to be promoting an event, some things, some considerations. I don't know if you have thought about this before, but you know, of course, you want to create some awareness of your event, and there's always marketing in terms of email. And I'm just curious, anybody using email right now to start promoting their event? Nope. Anybody? Okay. If you want to generate some buzz, there's always, you know, email. For those of you who are bloggers, you know, the idea is write a couple of blogs, get some articles about your event topic out there before your event to create some interest, awareness, and then social media. Not sure how many folks have a Twitter account or Facebook or LinkedIn account, or Instagram account, but these are all great ways of generating interest in your event. And even if, you know, it's like, well, with my church, we're having a game night, send out emails to folks, or on your, you know, church or synagogue's website, you know, post an article about what's coming up. Just curious, Barbara, Wendy, Claudia, Kathy, you folks who are going to be hosting, is this something that you think you're going to be doing, just using social media to kind of generate some buzz?
I really hadn't considered all this. This is like, this is why I'm taking the class to get on.
Okay.
Social media would be great.
Right. For those of you who have LinkedIn, you can certainly post something, or Facebook. You can, you know, get something interesting going on Facebook too. So again, you know, we don't cover any of this in any of our other Zoom classes, which are more how-to. And these are more about, well, what other considerations, you know how to schedule your Zoom event, you'll learn how to schedule your webinar. What else do you have to think about? How are you going to promote this? How are you going to get, you know, the word out? How are you going to plan for this? What are some considerations? And then let's talk a little bit about hosting tips. And again, whether you're going to be doing a webinar or a meeting, most of this will apply to you. So this goes without saying, make sure you test your audio, you test your camera before your event begins. Also, test your lighting. You may have heard all of this about, what's the best lighting. Make sure people can see you. And, are you going to use a virtual background? Is your room a little bit too messy, not quite camera ready? Are you using a virtual background? If you're going to be using a webinar, make sure you use that practice session feature, because you want to get all of your panelists, your participants to practice making sure their cameras are set up, their audio works, they can share their screens, their presentation is working. And I've mentioned this before, but I would consider, if you're having a large number of attendees, I would consider having a co-host on your meeting, on your webinar, to help with technical issues. You may want to have yet another person to staff the Q&A, the question and answer feature, to help you there, because as a host, if you have 300 people who are going to be attending your meeting, even if you have 20 people, sometimes just manning the chat can be a challenge, especially if you are new. So if you've just started to host meetings, you might want to ask another participant if they would be willing to just monitor the chat window for you, because it can be a lot to take in at the beginning. So just, if you think you're going to be needing some help, reach out and get, another co-host, another participant to help with technical issues, monitoring the chat, or if you're using the Q&A feature of a webinar. Again, try to minimize background noise. I use earbuds because there are times when people are mowing the lawn, there's all kinds of background noise going on. So if you can get a headset or earbuds like this to minimize the background noise, it's going to make things look a lot more professional. The last thing you want is to have your dogs barking in the background. Use virtual backgrounds. Now, I know not everybody's system may be, you may be able to use virtual backgrounds. If you have a slightly older machine, it may be tough, but if you're looking for, a slightly more professional look, fool around, try to find a nice background, virtual background to use, and you'll have to experiment. Now, for me, I have dark hair, so Get Set Up has their own virtual background that they like us to use, but it's a purple, and I just blend right into the background. So just try out different virtual backgrounds if your system will work with a virtual background. And also, if you're going to have presenters, I'm just curious, anybody going to be hosting a meeting or a webinar where you might be not the only speaker, but you may have other people speaking? Just curious, anyone? No?
Yes, I'm having it. Yes.
Okay. And Claudia, you might want to consider, just a consideration, either having everyone have a virtual background or maybe the same virtual background. Just an idea. You see, a lot of times I've attended a number of webinars where, these are large companies that are hosting, user conferences, and all of the presenters have the same virtual backgrounds. So that's, on one end of the spectrum. It's something to think about, depending upon what kind of look and feel you want for your meeting. I just like to put it out there, though. So experiment. Also, let attendees know when the event is going to begin. So I would say this would be part of your promotion when you're sending out your emails to people, your invites. Have them log on at least 5 minutes early to make sure that their connection works, their audio and video are working. And if you are going to allow people to log on early, you may or may not want to use the waiting room, or at the very least, put up a slide so that you can welcome them and say, you know, we will be starting at X amount of time, you know, welcome, the meeting will get started shortly. So just, you know, so people know when they've logged in, oh, I'm in the right place. Just, you know, consider a slide rather than nothing. So let me know if you have any questions about that. And also, if anybody else has ideas about what they've done, feel free to share. All right. Engaging your audience. And so it can be tough when you're speaking, you know, for a long time to keep folks engaged. Here are some things to think about. So there's always the chat, but also polling. Has anyone used the polling feature at all in Zoom? No. Yeah, Kathy, you've used the polling feature. Barbara?
Is that available in a free account or no?
It's not. You need to have a paid account.
Okay.
Yeah. And so very often what I'll do is at the start of my classes, I will launch a poll to get a feel for the experience level of participants. I didn't do that in this class because I wanted to go around and specifically ask people what they were going to be hosting so that we could share. But having polls before, during the meeting is a great way to keep the interest, to keep your participants engaged. We're also going to talk about the Q&A, but you know, again, if you're going to be using, you know, putting on a webinar, there's that Q&A feature, there's the chat feature, and there's also the polling. So think about ways to, you know, stop and just keep your audience engaged. So, and again, it depends on what you're going to be doing. If you're having a meeting, maybe go into breakout rooms if you feel comfortable. Using breakout rooms to kind of mix it up a little bit. Those people who are interested in a particular topic, for the next 10 minutes, let's go into this breakout room. And we have a class on how to use breakout rooms. That's another way to kind of keep people engaged, moving them around virtually, so to speak. Using the whiteboard, if you've ever used the whiteboard in Zoom, you know, just another visual to engage people. They can also hop in on the whiteboard with you. I wouldn't suggest that if you have 100 participants, but if you're using maybe if you're doing a small workshop and you can get a few people on the whiteboard just to have them, you know, have a break or just as a team exercise. So those are things that, you know, you can do to engage your audience. I want to show you what the Q&A feature looks like. Let me just.
Hey, Vicki, can I just?
Yeah, sure.
This is Kathy. I just wanted to add one thing in regards to the polls in Zoom. What I found, number one, they're very, very easy to use, and by very easy, I mean really very easy to use. So that's one good thing. But the other thing that I found useful is that they also provide reports on the back end. So if people wanted to get some statistics of your participants, for instance, I do that in the beginning of my classes, like a beginning Zoom class, you know, have you ever used Zoom, or how many meetings have you scheduled, different things like that. And then you have all that data on kind of the back end just to get a feel for it, which can be helpful.
Great. Oh, thank you so much. Yes. Most definitely.
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a question, Vicki, on the polling also. Would that be a way to do voting in a meeting that you're hosting on Zoom?
Yes, of course. And I've been on meetings where that's exactly what we use polling for. It's like select your, the 4 topics you would like to see presented, in the coming months, for our group. Exactly. It could be multiple choice. It could be single choice.
We used Zoom for our annual meeting, and I don't think they realized that. So we were doing raising of hands.
Yeah, no, if you have a paid account, take a look at the polling feature because it's very useful. Again, I use it at the beginning of class to get a feel for, what people's levels are, experience levels working with Zoom or Google or, Snapchat, but you can use it for voting. Yeah. And Joanne, you have a question about, is there a certain brand of microphone? What I can do is, let me do a little bit of research and I'll include that in the after class notes. I'll give some examples of microphones. You can always just go on to, I hate to say it, Amazon or any of like Best Buy or anything like that and just do a comparison. So, yep. Any other questions? These are great. I love the comments and the questions. Okay. So this is what that Q&A feature looks like. And again, this is only available if you're going to be doing a webinar. It comes with the webinar package. And again, you'll want this if you have, over 100 participants. Just imagine trying to, to handle all of the question and comments that come in. So with the Q&A, what you can do is participants, attendees, those view only folks, have access to the Q&A. They can enter in a question. And then if you have a person who is staffing just this Q&A feature, that person can decide, are we going to answer this question live? Meaning maybe whoever is speaking will say, oh, I see we have a question. Let me just answer that right now. Or will this require someone typing an answer? And when you type an answer, you can type it in the Q&A, the answer part of the Q&A screen so that everyone can see it, or you can make it a private answer and direct it to a particular attendee. And so that's really what the Q&A does. It also enables you to prioritize questions, rank them. In a chat, you can't. Things just start coming in and you have to scroll up and down to see, well, did I miss a question? With the Q&A, it's made for larger audiences. And it can be really useful, especially if you have one person whose job it is just to manage this Q&A. And so I wanted to just show this to you so you had an idea of what it looked like. We talked a little bit about this polling, engaging your audience. Reactions. So depending upon your, if you have participants who have access to their reactions button, that's another way of interacting. If you're on a webinar, your attendees, they will have access to a virtual raise hand, but I don't think they have access to reactions. So just a slight difference there. One of the things that you can do with a webinar is you can promote an attendee to be a panelist or basically a participant. So maybe you have an attendee that's been asking some really interesting questions or making some interesting comments. You may decide to promote them to a panelist and ask them to share their information with the group. And so that's something that you can do if you're hosting a webinar and you don't obviously have access to this if you're hosting a meeting, a Zoom meeting. So that's more on polling, reactions, and as a host, another way to engage your audience is, just, hey, everybody, can I see a thumbs up? How many people are interested in this? You know, if you didn't want to do a poll, if you just wanted to keep people, you know, engaged and attentive. And for those of you who haven't seen a poll, this is what it looks like. And you can have these stacked up, ready to go. You can create multiple polls for your meeting. You can create them on the fly during the meeting. And then throughout your meeting, you can simply launch the next poll when you think it's appropriate. And so it's kind of nice to have a few of these stacked up, ready to go. If you see that there's maybe a lag, if you have more than one person who's going to be speaking and there's a minute or so in between when the next person gets set up, maybe launch a poll to keep people interested. And you can always also share the results of the poll with your participants and attendees. So that's something that may be of interest to you. Let's talk a little bit about monetizing your event. I mentioned that with the webinar, you have the ability to use the PayPal integration at registration time. So when you have set up a registration page, your users will click on a button and they will actually go out to PayPal. They can fill in all the information. They'll need a PayPal account as well. And then once they're done, PayPal redirects you back to your registration page, your Zoom registration page, and your attendees can finish registering and then be on their way. So that's with a webinar. If they're going to be, if you're going to be charging people to attend. Now, there are other websites, and I'm going to include this because I don't have a slide created for this, but I was taking a look at this today, charging for Zoom events, and I'll include this in the after class notes as well. One or two sites that you can use. One of them is called Extras, and you can actually go to the Extras website, fill out some information, make a copy of your Zoom meeting URL, put it in there, and then you can send this out to folks to, if you want to charge for your Zoom meeting. And I haven't used it yet, but so I don't have the specifics, but there are other applications that you can use if you don't want to host a webinar, but you simply want to charge your attendees for to attend your Zoom meeting. And so there's a lot of information out there as well, and I'll provide a couple of examples if people are thinking about doing that. You can also set up your Zoom meeting to accept donations. This requires another third-party application. One example is called Power, P-O-W-R, and you probably can't see it on this screen. It's a little too busy, but what I wanted to show was there is this donate button, and this probably requires a little bit more technical savvy to do this, but you can. You certainly can set up your Zoom page with a donate button. So throughout your Zoom meeting, users have the option to click on the donate button. It's there if you're interested. And finally, let's talk a little bit about post-event follow-up. So I don't know if any of you have done this, and for some of you, this probably won't, may not apply, but for others, whether you're, if you're doing a Zoom webinar, and I think for certain paid accounts, you also will have the option to send out a link to for a survey after your meeting, after your webinar. To get some more feedback from your participants, your attendees. And so you can use the Zoom link that they provide, whether you want to send it in an email or make it available in your browser. Remember, you may want to send recordings of the event. You can have a link in your email where users can go, attendees can go to get that recording. Any questions about that? Okay. And just in closing, for folks who, wanted to, still weren't sure, I just put this out there to help you understand when you're going to be doing, when a webinar would be more appropriate versus a meeting. And there are also certain features that are available in Zoom that are more appropriate for Zoom meetings than they are for webinars. That would be, for example, breakouts, a waiting room. And again, if you're going to be hosting 300 people in a webinar, you're not going to be using the waiting room. Having a registration page is enough to, I think, meet out the people who really want to go to your webinar. And also the gallery view. Yeah, this could be a little crazy if you have 300 people attending your webinar and they're in a gallery view. Any questions about this?
Hi, Vicki, it's Wendy. I wondered if I like your comparison, the page you just showed us, and also the first page you showed us comparing the meeting and webinar. Is there a way to copy that, or?
I can get it to you. Yeah, I'll go ahead and send it as an attachment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in after class notes. Okay. Yeah. And let me also ask you, so we've just really started putting this class out there. And for those of you who are joining today, I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment so I can get you back on this screen. What, if anything, were you hoping to get out of today's meeting that wasn't provided? Was there something in particular you were really hoping to learn about that we didn't cover? Okay, any specific like how-tos? Because again, I wasn't able to show people anything. Myra, how about you?
Well, I wanted to expand my horizons on Zoom because I've only been a participant.
Okay.
We do have Zoom at church and through my work, but I also wanted to be able to use it myself once my book publishes. So I've gained a lot of information from, and I do plan to come back because it's a lot to absorb.
There is a lot to absorb. And Myra, have you taken the scheduling and hosting a Zoom class?
No, not yet.
You should take that. So we have a number of other Zoom classes. We're always putting up more. How to schedule and host a Zoom event, advanced features for Zoom hosts, how to use whiteboards and breakouts and polling. If you're going to be hosting meetings and want to get more comfortable, I strongly recommend taking some of those additional classes because they'll give you a nice solid foundation for using the tool.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And Hiroko, how about you? Was there anything?
I think I will stick to that Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Yes. I have no intention of charging anybody or raising any money, so I'm just going to stick to Zoom.
Right. Right. And really this class is for folks who are going to be, you don't necessarily have to charge anyone for your webinar, but folks who are who are going to be expanding their horizons and maybe doing some fancy things with Zoom, whether it be hosting a webinar or looking to do some additional or think about some additional things when it comes to planning and hosting your Zoom meeting. So, okay, great. Thanks so much for that feedback, folks. And I am going to wrap it up there. Some of you may have noticed we have Get Set Up has a new look and feel. I think 2 weeks ago, we launched our new platform. Has anyone had any trouble navigating? Have you been able to find what you need on the new Zoom look? Has it been okay? Because we do have a new member orientation class that Marv gives, and he does a great job of taking people through the new look and feel of the website, if that was a concern. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone so much for joining me today. I hope you picked up some useful tips and tricks, and let me know if, use that feedback button to help us, learn more about what other classes you would like to see us put out there, what other classes you would like to see us host more frequently. That's how we make things better, by listening to you. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And I hope to see you in other classes. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.